Hi, I'm Arti and I work at Counsel to Secure Justice in New Delhi. I am a lawyer and have litigated for children who've been sexually abused. My experience working with people who've caused harm, as well as earlier experience of working with people in prison, both led me to understand that the existing legal system often doesn't meet needs of people who are involved in it. Often it causes further harm. And that's what led me to explore alternative justice responses, including restorative justice. Counsel to Secure Justice has been implementing a pilot restorative justice program since 2017 with children in conflict with law. Apart from restorative justice, we also offer a wide variety of other restorative interventions for both children and adults. I think of restorative justice as a different lens of looking at harm, a lens that is different from the existing legal system and one that is more holistic. Let's talk about that using an example. Say person A is returning from work one day when they are suddenly attacked by person B. B brandishes a knife, threatens A, steals their wallet and flees from the scene. Now, if A decides to report to the police, the legal system will swing into action. The police is first going to look at what law applies, what section is applicable. During the course of the trial, if it is found that there is enough evidence to find B guilty, the court will dispense a suitable punishment. So the legal system's focus is limited to the person who has caused harm. There is no space for meaningful involvement for the person who has been harmed. Perhaps since the day of the incident, they continue to wonder why B chose to attack them. They continue to be concerned about their safety each day as they return from work. However, the existing system does not create space for the person who's been harmed to talk about how they were impacted or what they need. The system also doesn't focus on why the incident took place, why B did what they did. Perhaps B stole A's wallet because they have a drug problem and they needed money for drugs. But the legal system does nothing to ensure that this will not happen again. Restorative justice, on the other hand, is a more holistic response. Rather than solely determining guilt and dispensing punishment, it tries to involve all those who may have been impacted by an incident to come together and to understand what is it that people need and what can be done to make things right. Restorative justice invites all those who may have been impacted by the incident, so this would include the person harmed, the person who caused harm, perhaps both their families because they may have been indirectly impacted. It could also involve people living in that area where the incident took place because they've been concerned about their safety since that day. Participation in the process is completely voluntary, including for the person who caused harm. So restorative justice is always optional and can never be mandated. Trained facilitators work with all potential participants to understand whether they'd like to participate in the process, what they need, what they'd expect from the process. And during the process, what usually happens is that there is a discussion about what happened, how it impacted everyone, what their needs are, and what can be done to make things right. Restorative justice is not a fact-finding process, so it can only take place once the person who's caused harm acknowledges their actions. Most processes usually end in an outcome agreement where the person who's caused harm promises to undertake certain actions to repair the harm to the victim, as well as to ensure that this does not happen again. For example, in the case of a person who has a drug problem, this could involve them participating in a de-addiction program. Restorative justice can benefit people who've been harmed in multiple ways. First of all, it creates space for anyone who's been harmed to talk about how they were impacted and what they need. There's this beautiful documentary called Kathy's Story, which is about a woman's journey after she was sexually abused as a child. Despite the fact that the person who harmed her went through the legal system and served a sentence in prison, she continued to be impacted by the incident. And finally, she decided to meet with him face to face. She told him about how the incident continued to impact her. She looked him in the eye and said that you put me through things I never deserved to go through. And she says that is the moment when I stopped being a victim. I got my power back. And that is the beauty of a restorative justice process. Unlike the existing legal system which leaves victims out in the cold, restorative justice processes create space for genuine and meaningful involvement. And regaining the sense of control can be an important part in the healing journey after being re-victimized. Apart from this, restorative justice processes also create space for receiving an acknowledgement that yes, this happened and this was wrong. from the person who caused them harm as well as from their family and their communities. This again can be an important part of the healing journey. Restorative justice processes also help to reduce feelings of fear, anxiety, and distress, and evidence substantiates it. When someone who's been harmed sits face to face with the person who caused them harm in a safe space, it helps them to see them as not just the person who attacked them, but much more, thereby reducing the feeling of fear. Evidence also shows that restorative justice reduces symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder in the case of severe and complex harm. There are definitely multiple benefits for people who have been harmed. At the same time, restorative justice can also benefit people who caused harm. While the process focuses on how they can be held accountable, it also focuses on ensuring that they get the support they need so that this does not happen again. This could involve professional support in the form of de-addiction or therapy, and it could also involve mobilizing their family and community to ensure that they get emotional support as well as increased social support so that their emotional well-being increases. Restorative justice does pose risks to people who are involved. The primary risk is of safety. When we bring the person who's caused harm into the same room with the person who's been harmed, there is a risk that the person who caused harm may use the space as an opportunity to justify their actions, to minimize their actions, or to deflect blame onto the victim, thereby resulting in victim blaming. When we involve family or community members as support persons, there is also a risk that they may condone the harmful behavior. For example, based on socialization, they may say that intimate partner violence is a part and parcel of life and everyone must just get accustomed to it. These risks are definitely real and tangible. At the same time, there are strong, credible ways to mitigate these risks. One of these ways is to have highly trained facilitators hold the process. They are trained not only in restorative justice facilitation and dealing with all possible eventualities, but also in understanding gender-based harm, intimate partner violence, what power dynamics look like, how trauma manifests, and how re-traumatization can be prevented. Facilitators work with all the participants individually at first and carry out detailed preparation to understand what their needs are, what potential risks are, and how these risks can be mitigated. And finally, it's also important to remember that while restorative justice may be highly beneficial, it is not always the best solution for everyone. Sometimes other things may work better before restorative justice can happen, and at times there may be other things that can work and restorative justice may not. At CSJ, we carried out a study from 2016 to 18 to understand what justice is for victims. We worked with children who'd been sexually abused, adult survivors of child sexual abuse, as well as women who had experienced intimate partner violence. And what we found in the study was that most people said that justice for them was having their needs met. And the needs they spoke about the most were the need for having a voice, a space to tell their story. Some spoke about the need for an apology. Some spoke about the need for relationship repair with the person who had caused harm. And most of them spoke about the need for an acknowledgement, to be told that yes, this happened and this was wrong. However, the legal system as it exists does not create space for people who have been harmed to have their needs met. There is definitely no space for acknowledgement within the legal system from the person who's caused harm. Even acknowledgement from the legal system, that is a conviction, is not always a real possibility. When I was litigating, the conviction rate was only 13%, and now it's gone up to 34%, but that still means that a lot of genuine cases never receive a conviction, and the victim never receives the acknowledgement that yes, this happened to them. People who are harmed also do not get space to tell their story on their own terms during the legal process. They do get to testify, but that can actually be a very disempowering process, which does not account for their trauma. Apart from that, the legal system also does not create space for an apology or for relationship repair. In fact, in cases where the person who's caused harm is a family member or a loved one, the legal system only ruptures the relationships by sentencing people to long-term imprisonment and by creating more anger and resentment within the family. Project Restore in New Zealand is the example of one organization that offers restorative justice to people who may choose not to go to the legal system. Anyone who's experienced sexual harm can contact the organization, and then the organization reaches out to other potential participants, and if everyone agrees, the process can take place. Project Restore has quite a few specialists who work with the participants during the preparatory stage. They have a survival specialist who works with the person who has been harmed. They have a harmful sexual behavior specialist who works with the person who has caused harm. And during the process, there is usually an outcome agreement formed, which involves actions to be taken by the person who's caused harm. This could involve actions taken to repair the harm to that particular person who's been harmed, as well as to ensure that such actions do not take place again. These programs have shown to have multiple benefits for people who've been involved, including the person who's been harmed. They help meet all of the victim needs. At the same time, they can also help to avoid the harm caused by the existing legal system. However, when we talk about restorative justice programs existing outside of the legal system, it's all the more important to remember that these programs must have strong checks and balances in place to ensure that there is no further harm done and the rights of all parties are continuously respected.